Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me again this evening. The reason why I thought I would talk about the topic I'm going to talk about tonight is some of the questions that came up were questions like, what do I do about this? How do I handle that? What do I say when? And this is a common theme that often comes up whenever we're dealing with narcissistic people, and it can come up for a variety of different reasons. Usually because narcissistic people, as a rule, tend to defy logic. It's a lot of nonsensical logic, nonsensical reasoning. And whether that's a partner, an ex partner, family members, people, friendship groups, your social network, things like that, even work colleagues, what you often find is someone who it doesn't matter what you do or what you say, it's always their agenda. It's always what they want. They always know best. So, what I was thinking was, let's have a look at this for what it is. I mean, some of the questions I sometimes ask myself, sometimes I would ask other people when I'm having these conversations, are things like, how do you reason with someone who has set out to be unreasonable? How do you negotiate with selfish? How do you come to an agreement with someone who is highly disagreeable? How do you convince someone who won't see whatever it is right in front of them? They reject all evidence. And how do you show someone something? Someone who is determined to, I would say, pretend to be stupid. Sometimes they will do it just to watch you flounder. Sometimes they will do it just to frustrate you. Sometimes they will do it, well, for a variety of reasons. But really, what you're dealing with someone who's not necessarily interested in some kind of resolution. It's all about winning. And that's where we get tied up. That's where we get lost sometimes, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to convince them, we're trying to reach them, we're trying to negotiate with them, whatever it is. They are not interested. It's about winning, it's about domination. So, before I go any further, this evening, what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the nature of narcissism, the construct, why it's like that. I'm going to talk about why you can't win. I'm also going to talk about what you can do instead. Okay. So, to begin with, narcissism comes in many different shapes and sizes. It's like everything else, it's a spectrum. There can be a normal level that we all have to some degree, and sometimes it's going to heighten in different situations. But generally, when we're talking about narcissism, we are talking about traits that can be very deeply ingrained in someone. They might not necessarily have a disorder of some kind, but they can be what's known as subclinical. They're very deeply ingrained, they're long term, they're persistent, and they're pervasive. The same could be said for someone with maybe a diagnosis of a personality disorder. Then we see them really ramped up, if you will. They almost go through the roof, through the ceiling. But really, with narcissism, you're dealing with someone who believes themselves to be very entitled. They want status, admiration, they want love, but they want these things without earning it. It's theirs by right. They believe they're special, superior. Again, they're highly disagreeable. And it's all about narcissistic people have a very, very fragile, false sense of self, and they need constant attention, constant validation, people agreeing with them, people colluding with them, going along with their fantasies, and so on. Because with narcissism, it's all about other people's perceptions of them. Okay. They are also very highly envious, to the point where sometimes it's often said that narcissism is very destructive. It's not just destructive to other people, ultimately, it's destructive to themselves. And there's an expression, haven't heard this in a long time, but there's an expression that they would say that in the kingdom of the blind, the one eyed man is king. Well, if you think of narcissism, in the kingdom of the blind, the narcissistic person hates the one eyed man. They want to destroy them. They want to kill them. They will moan the one-eyed man doesn't know where he's going. So they're They're very, very destructive, very highly envious. You're also looking at with narcissism, because the belief that they're special and so on. If you flip that the other way, it is a fear of being ordinary. It's a fear of not being special. It's a fear of not getting admiration. It's a fear of maybe not just not having the spotlight, but a fear of having to share the spotlight with anyone else. Because if someone achieves something, someone has something, someone can do something, that envy kicks in. They believe something has been taken from them, something that was theirs by right. Someone else is getting attention. And also, I said a moment ago about how with narcissism, what we often see is this, it's very important to them how other people are seeing them. Image is everything. And yet, if you think of how narcissistic people see others, we'll see them in different ways, but I think in sort of like three main ways. First of all, they'll see someone as useful, someone who could benefit them. They'll see them of no use, or they'll see them as a threat. Okay, again, a threat to their ego, a threat to their status, and so on. So, if you think of these characteristics, these traits being very deeply ingrained. So, if you're trying to reason, if you're trying to argue, if you're trying to get your point across, if you're trying to show them that what they're doing and what they're saying is really, really hurtful, they're not interested in a resolution. They're only interested in winning. And sometimes they will bully, sometimes they will threaten, they'll try to intimidate, sometimes they will guilt trip, they will try to shame, other times they will try to moralize or they will intellectualize, whatever it is they have to do to try to regain what they believe is some kind of superiority. Other times, what you could find with, again, narcissism manifests differently. Other times, what you get is them feigning some kind of confusion. They will act stupid. They don't know what you're talking about. They don't know why it's a big deal. They might deliberately mishear something to try to make a joke out of it, make you look, even feel as if you're stupid because you didn't pronounce something properly. So they might deliberately mishear something. They might misinterpret something. If you said this, then it obviously means that. And the more you're trying to explain, the more you're trying to correct them, the more you're trying to get your point across, sometimes you'll see them smirk. Sometimes you'll hear them laugh. Sometimes you'll, one way or another, they're keeping you off balance. In narcissistic relationships, they largely succeed when they get to dominate others through destabilizing them and keeping them off balance. They feed off those reactions. By the way, they feed off reactions whether they're positive or negative. If they do something and they get a positive reaction, they're still being fed. But when it comes to your reactions to things, they will feed off your negative reactions. They feed off seeing you frustrated. They one way or another, they want you to back down. They want you to give in. Even if you give in and you're exasperated because no matter what you do, you've tried to say the same thing a dozen times, but you've tried to say it in different ways. You've used little analogies, you've used examples, you've even used glove puppets, for God's sake, and they still look at you like they don't know what you're talking about. As long as you back down and you stop bringing it up, as far as they're concerned, they've won. Other situations, what you might find is, you catch them out doing something, whatever it is. And if the confusion doesn't work, if the intimidation doesn't work, if the lying doesn't work, there are some who will roll about on the floor in front of you, kicking their legs in the air and screaming that you're being so mean to them. And they'll just keep doing this until you stop, like a child having a tantrum. They will do that just so that they can win, just to get you to back down. So often that's what you're dealing with. I said a moment ago, can be very destructive. They sometimes they will even destroy themselves in the process, never mind hurting others, just to protect that false ego. Okay. Now, when you are engaging with a narcissistic person, you are trying to reason with them. You're trying to talk to them. You're trying to think of the right combination of words. You're trying to think of a way that they're suddenly just going to go, oh, yeah, that's it. No problem. I get it now. What you have to remember is they are playing, sometimes they're playing a completely rigged game. Sometimes they're playing a completely different game. For instance, you could be playing chess, they're playing poker. Other times, let's say you are both playing chess, but you make a move and it's a move that they don't like, they'll suddenly change it to poker. So you end up playing poker. And again, you might have been dealt a good hand. They don't like that. So they'll change it to snakes and ladders or something. One way or another, the game keeps changing. The goalposts keep shifting. The rules keep changing. Whatever it is you're doing, whatever, it's always going to be rigged, and it will always be rigged in their favor. Okay. Logic, reason, reality, these things are irrelevant. The rules of the game are irrelevant. The rules get made up pretty much as they go along because it's all about power, control, it's all about winning. And I said earlier, they can blame shift, they can ignore, punish, they will change the topic, they will claim victimhood, they will threaten, they will do whatever it is they need to do. Many narcissistic people, now they can be accomplished actors, but many of them think they are accomplished actors. And when dealing with certain situations and certain people, they can have very well rehearsed scripts. They can have very well rehearsed reactions to things, which is why you often see the feigned confusion or the outrage, the moral outrage. How dare you bring this up? These things are all aimed, as I said, at destabilizing you, to have you confused, to have you to question your own reality, to have you to question, I don't know, even your sense of self, anything. Sometimes you even wonder what your own name is anymore. It's all to keep you off balance. And when we're asking things like, what should I do? What should I say? How can I get through to them? Well, all situations are going to be different because there could be different things at stake. There could be money, there could be kids, there could be a lot of different things going on. But rather than asking what I should do or should say, maybe look at a different question. And the question is, what power do they really have? Now, as I said a moment ago, there can be different situations, different things going on, but it's really what power do they have? This is something I believe about narcissism. Narcissism cannot exist by itself. Narcissism needs enablers, whether willing or otherwise. They're often called flying monkeys, they're agents and things like that that carry out their bidding for them, but that's not always the case. When it comes to enablers, there are willing, there are unwilling. There are different kinds of enablers because they live in this false reality, remember, and they need others to validate that belief about themselves. They need others to reflect back to them that they are amazing. And anybody who doesn't think that they're amazing, that they're powerful, that they're fantastic, they are the funniest person they've ever met, they are the smartest person they've ever met, they are the hottest person they've ever met. Anyone who doesn't believe that or collude with that, well, it's because they're bad. It's because they're stupid. It's because they're wicked. It's because they're envious. It's whatever, okay? So, as I said a moment ago, the only power they have is what you give them. And a lot of the time, that can be our willingness to try to bring out the best in them, to try to reason with them, to try to reach them, to try to help them. And that's our willingness to do that. That can sometimes be our empathy. That's our compassion. There's a lot of different things going on now. What I'm not suggesting is you start to become a monster, because it's the thing. You don't have to become a monster to deal with monsters. Okay. You just become the very thing the monsters don't bother. If I put it to you this way, the only power they have is your willingness to engage, your willingness to try these things. Now, certainly give them a chance, try and reason with them, try and get through them. But once you see that repeated pattern of behavior, rather than try to think of other things to do, you start to think. I always say, look at things the opposite way around. You start to think about what not to do. You stop trying. And what I mean by that is you stop trying to reason with someone who has set out to be unreasonable. You stop trying to come to some kind of agreement with someone who's going to change their mind 2 minutes later. Stop trying to negotiate with selfish. You don't explain yourself. You stop hoping that they're going to change. And you stop trying to think of very clever ways to make them stop doing what they're doing and to see things differently. Even because if you ever notice, I talked about this on another live stream, and I even put it out in a video. I took a clip from the live stream. If you think of them like the Borg in Star Trek, the Enterprise shoots a torpedo and there's a little bit of damage. For a moment, they try to shoot another torpedo and the Borg have adapted. So they have to change their torpedo. And that's what it's like when we say something to a narcissistic person. For a moment, they might have to pause and think about it because they don't have an answer. They don't have an excuse. But if you say the same thing again or something like it, they now have an answer. They have adapted. They have learned. It's all about keeping reality at bay. It's all about keeping the truth at bay. So what we do is sometimes we might say something and it doesn't matter how they react. We've already said it. We don't have to say it again. They already know it. Okay. When we're not engaging in the way that they're used to us engaging, what we're doing is we're shifting the power dynamic. Now, what I mean by that is we're not necessarily reclaiming our power as such. It's just that we're not giving them any power over us. Okay. Two people come to mind. Two people that specialize in narcissism. When it comes to trying to fix them, convince them, help them, Richard Grannon once said, abandon all hope, because you can't fix that doesn't want to be fixed. They think they're fine as they are, so you stop trying. Dr. Romani, in one of her videos, I heard her say one time, you cannot love the toxicity out of them. These are, both of those things do seem a bit harsh, but they are really worth thinking about. We stop trying to bring out the best in someone who's determined not to show it. They want to show a version of themselves. And often that version of themselves is all about the domination and the control they have over you. Okay, so like I said, they're the things we stop doing. We stop trying to reason. We stop trying to negotiate. We stop trying to get through to them. We stop trying to fix them. Stop trying to help them. We don't become rude. We don't become monsters. We don't insult them. We don't try to humiliate them. We can still be decent. We can still have kindness. We can still have good manners and things like that. But what we don't do is we don't engage on their terms. So what do we do instead? Next time you're accused of being selfish, or you're accused of being stupid, or you're accused of having some kind of ulterior motive, well, if in the past you found that trying to reason and negotiate and explain yourself wasn't getting you anywhere, instead of doing that, give them their own work to do. Just ask them. Ask them to explain themselves. Do their own work. Simple questions. Things like whatever it is they're talking about. Well, why is that important? Why would I do that? When did this happen? Give me an example. Questions like that. You're not defending your actions. You're asking them to explain what they mean. There's a question. Actually, there's a question I watched one time. Jordan Peterson had asked it. It's a very good question. It's a very disarming question. Just to ask them, why would you think that? I thought that is a very powerful question. It is. It does sound quite harmless. You're giving them their own work to do. Why would you think that? When we ask questions like that, what we're not doing is we're not engaging on their terms. We're giving them their own work to do. They are going to have to think about what their answer is. Now, chances are there's going to be an accusation of being mean, being selfish, and so on. You're being a horrible person. You're trying to intellectualize. Whatever it is. They'll get angry. They'll get upset. They'll go through a lot of different things. But what we're not doing is we're not engaging on their terms. If we have done something, we're accused of being selfish. We're not going to defend our actions. We're not going to explain how it was only a coffee that we had or something. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to ask them, why is it important? Why does it matter to them that we had a coffee? If we have a boundary and we explain it to them and they cross it, we're not necessarily going to defend our boundaries and why they have to stick to them. It's a question that often comes up. How do you get people to respect your boundaries? How do you get narcissistic people to respect your boundaries? You can't. It's up to you to defend them. You defend the boundary. You don't defend the reasons for the boundaries. It's up to them to explain to you why your boundaries are a problem. So they do something, whether that's lying to you or whatever it is, you tell them that's not acceptable, or they insult you. You say, I'm not going to engage if you're going to talk to me like that. You don't have to explain to them why you don't like being swore at or threatened or something. It's up to them to explain why they think it's okay. All right. When it comes to reinforcing your boundaries, this is the thing. If you tell them something like, if you talk to me that again, the conversation is ended, I'm going home, or whatever it is, just use that as an example, and they continue doing what they're doing, if you don't leave, they've just learned that your boundaries don't matter. They've crossed the boundary and they have control and they have power, and you're having to explain to them over and over again why it's not okay for them to mess you about the way they are. If you tell them you're going home, you have to go home. If you tell them you're not going to reply to any more messages like that, you have to stop. You have to stop replying to them. They don't have to like your boundaries. That's the thing. They don't have to like them. You can't get them. You can't make them respect them. It's up to you to defend them, not defend the reasons for them. You don't have to explain to anyone why you don't like being swore at or whatever. It's up to them to explain why they think it's okay. Ask them why they have a problem with your boundaries, rather than you explaining why it's a problem, why you have a problem with them crossing them. As I say, you don't have to become mean. You don't have to become angry. You don't have to become a monster. This is where I disagree with Jordan Peterson. You don't have to become a monster to fight monsters, okay? You just become the thing that monsters don't bother with. Other things you can do to help with this. Now, it is going to be difficult. It's going to take practice, and you will probably make mistakes, and that's perfectly okay, because we don't learn unless we do make mistakes. But what we can do is we can practice things like the grey rock method. One word answers, emotionless. It's a yes or a no. There's nothing ambiguous about it. Okay. We become dull. We become boring. We respond. We don't react. If you know someone is feeding off your reactions, and don't react. Now, even if they are sending you funny videos or something like that, or they're telling you jokes or whatever, again, they're trying to get some kind of engagement. As I said, you don't have to be mean. You don't have to be rude. You can engage them on some level. But once you see something like that and that starts to increase and they're trying to drag you back into their world, no. Again, you're trying to keep that power dynamic in your favor. You are in charge of you. You're responsible of you for you. You're not responsible for what they think or for how they feel. I talked about indifference, might have been about a year ago. I talked about it on a live stream. I can't remember if I did a video on it. Some people treat indifference as a tactic or a strategy to use with people who do try to elicit different responses from you. And it can be useful, can be helpful. I tend to think of indifference as maybe an outcome of recovery, if you want to put it that way. You're indifferent in the sense that it's not that you don't care. It's not that you don't care. It's not that you necessarily want anything bad to happen to them. but you've no interest if anything good happens to them either. You remain indifferent no matter what they do. You just remain factual, to the point when it comes to using that grey rock method. And even if you're getting text messages, emails, whatever it is, and sometimes the fear is, but they can see that I've read it. They can see that I've read it. Well, so what? Who cares? Really, who cares whether they can see you've read it or not? If you decide to respond, that's entirely up to you. You can answer it. If you decide to respond, you could answer an hour later. You could answer the following day. That's entirely up to you. Whether they have seen you've read the message or not, that's still entirely up to you. That is your power. That is your autonomy. So I know I've kind of whizzed through this tonight, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not saying any of this is easy. It is something you might need a lot of practice at. It might be something that you would benefit from, maybe a little bit of coaching, a little bit of therapy, something like that. But what you're not doing is you're not engaging in that game where the goalposts are always shifting, they're always moving. You're not trying to reach standards that they are setting for you. Standards you're never going to reach. Because even if they told you had to be flawlessly perfect, even if you were miraculously flawless and perfect, they would still find something. You're not playing it by their game. So it's not always about what you should do or what you shouldn't do or what you should say or what you shouldn't say. It's about not necessarily engaging in their game in the first place. Be polite, be courteous. You don't have to be anything more than that. You're not engaging with someone whose sense of self is so fragile that the slightest gust of wind, it'll just collapse like a house of cards. You're not necessarily engaging with that. You're keeping your sense of reality. You're keeping your sense of integrity. Okay? So that is kind of me whizzing through that tonight, and I do hope you found that interesting. I do hope you found that helpful. As I say, none of this is easy. You might need practice. You might need support, things like that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to have a look at questions to see that came up. On My Way says, I really enjoyed the therapeutic power of stories. Good. I'm glad you did. Paul Taylor, really, really nice guy. Met him about a year ago at that seminar that Richard Grannon invited. He was one of the speakers there as well. He invited us both. So we eventually just got around to doing a collaboration. Very interesting guy. His channel, Readers of the Lost Art. It's very interesting. He talks about different aspects of art. He talks about storytelling and things like that. Really, really interesting guy. So yeah, check his channel out. And if anyone hasn't seen or listened to our chat, give it a go. He is a really interesting guy, really nice guy. So hello everyone. Hello Spaceman Spiff. Hello Ellie Wynn. Hello Phil. Dealing with covert hurts, says Ian. Covert narcissism is difficult. It's different in the sense that with narcissism, we often see a lot of grandiosity. It's usually very easy to spot. Grandiose narcissist almost arrives with a theme tune, if you know what I mean, with a fanfare. Covert narcissism is different. It's very subtle. It's very under the radar. And it can be quite slow and insidious in the way that they undermine and hurt people. It can also, with grandiose narcissism, you kind of know what you're dealing with because it's very in your face. Whereas with covert narcissism, because it can be very subtle. Sorry, Freud's annoying me. Do you want one of these? There you go. Round here. There you go, buddy. Get my doggy piggy. Where do I get to? Oh yeah, covert narcissism. It can be slow. It's like a slow burn. The grandiosity is still there, but it's internalized. The grandiose is externalized, and it's easy to see. With the covert, it's all internalized, and there's a lot of low mood. There's a lot of fragility. There's a lot of anxiety. There's this fear, not this fear. There's just this complaint, if you will, that no one appreciates them. No one sees how amazing and special they are, which includes you, by the way. Which has us wondering, I should be trying harder. I should be trying harder. So where do we get to? Let me see. Adam says, yeah, Aim says, don't react, just inform. Let me see. Manu says, I don't like the topic of narcissism because many people these days tell other narcissism, but I see they are too. There are people out there. There are. This is the thing about narcissism. Again, you see that a lot of the grandiosity. How self-aware is a narcissist? We all have traits, all of us, and they can be heightened in different situations, like if we feel threatened or if we feel excited. At a low level, we're really dealing with something like our own self-interest, okay? Other times when it's like if someone insults us, tells lies about us and hurts our feelings, we take something like an ego wound, we feel hurt. That's our narcissism, but it's not unhealthy. It's a healthy, normal level. There are narcissistic people out there who have no idea that they're narcissists, or they're narcissistic, rather. In the sense that, and this would be very common with things like covert narcissism. I said a moment ago, no one appreciates how good they are, how amazing they are. With altruistic narcissism, you would see the same thing. Often you would see the same thing. They get their validation through being kind and generous and all these gifts and doing amazing things for people and so on. Not always recognizing the difference between a good thing and the right thing. So because it's all about feeding them, they're feeding their ego. And they don't see anything wrong. I'm thinking of how to phrase this because I know it's not going to come out the way I want it to in my head. They do these kind acts, they do these generous things, but it's like charity begins with an audience, okay? If there was no audience there, would they really be doing it? You know, their pictures are all over social media doing this really nice, amazing, pleasant, kind thing, you know, and they're getting the validation from people telling them how wonderful they are, you know, and how kind and generous they are. They have no concept of being narcissistic, even though behind closed doors at home, those closest to them, they're an absolute monster to them. They point at the good works that they do and say, no, what you're saying is not true because look at the great stuff I'm doing. So it's really comes down to how self-aware is a narcissistic person. So where do we get to? If you hear crunching in the background, by the way, it's Freud. It's not my bones. I'm not that old. Euphonium Pooch says, thank you for a great stream. I'll have to get back and listen. It's amazing how much you can just put your finger right on. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you find it helpful. What I might do with this is what I did with a previous one. I might cut out a lot of the waffle, put it into something very short and concise and just put it out there so people can watch about 10 minutes worth of it and get all of the info without the waffling, if you know what I mean. Spaceman Spiff again, they only have the power because you give it to them. Yeah, they have the power that we give them, just like they only have the attention that we give them. They only have the validation that we give them. Absolutely. Gina Farley says, don't get into the boxing ring with them. They'll wear you down. Yeah, and this is the thing. You get into a boxing ring with them, and and it doesn't matter what you do. They'll be dancing all around you. They will. And you could be, you know, wearing your shorts and your gloves, whatever boxers wear. You know, you go into the boxing ring, and they're dressed up to play cricket or baseball or something. You know, as I say, it's a completely different game. It's always a rigged game. You're never playing the same game. when you're playing with a narcissistic person. Goalposts shifting all over the place, rules changing on a moment to moment basis. And that's how we often end up driving ourselves insane. Let me see where we get to. Ian says, what if they keep leaving the house in a mess after you tell them a million times? Just a disrespect. Remember, yeah, Freud, get out of the way, mate. You're going to pull these leads. Go on, sit down. Sit down. Go on. He's being irritating tonight. What? Sit. Where did I get to? Yeah, it's like I said earlier, when it comes to boundaries, it's not that we have to explain why the boundary is important. It's about them explaining why they think it isn't important, okay? And whatever consequences someone sets up, claims, whatever, that's the thing about the consequences. If we just give the nuclear option, whatever it is, if we give the nuclear option, if we don't enforce that, if we don't do that nuclear option, they've learned that we don't mean anything, and anything we'll say won't matter. They can just do what they like, even if there are still consequences. The fact that we didn't do what we said we would do. So whatever the consequence is, if you don't stick to that, and they will moan, they will complain, as I say, they might even roll about the floor, kicking their legs in the air and squealing how horrible you are, just like a toddler would. That's really uncomfortable and really unpleasant. But if we don't do what we said we would do, as far as they're concerned, even if we do something, as far as they're concerned, they've won. That's the thing about winning as well. Sometimes there's not necessarily anything wrong with letting somebody think they won. Now, situations are going to be different and circumstances are going to be different. It really depends on what we're talking about. But if I give you an example, I have no problem with people having the last word. Not at all. Getting the last word doesn't mean you're right. Sometimes getting the last word just means all you did was either get the other person to shut up or just bore them so much that they're not even going to engage anymore. It's usually the latter for me. Yeah, I have no problem with letting people have the last word. That's why trolls tend to run free on my channel. I don't delete them. They say and do what they want. As long as they're not bothering other people, then I will do something about it if I find it, if I see it. But yeah, whenever they say stuff about me, I just leave it hanging. Don't even answer them. Let me see where we get to. Carl says, "Go deep. Don't Yeah, I've heard that expression before. Don't defend or engage or explain or personalize. Yeah, you've probably said in that one sentence what I tried to say in about 10 minutes. So yeah, you don't defend yourself, you don't explain yourself, you don't expect them to change, you don't hope they're going to change, you're not trying to find the right kind of words, even using glove puppets to try and explain to them, I don't like that. What do you mean you don't like that? You don't try to do any of that. You don't engage with it in the first place. You actually get them to do their own work. And I think that question I mentioned earlier is a good one. Whatever it is they're accusing you of, why would you think that? Or whatever it is they're accusing you of, when did I do that? Why would I do that? Why is that important to you? When we ask questions like that, we are not engaging on their terms. Okay, we're engaging on our own. And sometimes will be things said that we could find very hurtful, very offensive. If it's of any help to you, imagine someone is telling you, they're calling you, they're accusing you of being a helicopter. Okay. Are you really going to explain to them why you're not a helicopter? All right, son. You're not a helicopter either, sure you're not. No, you're not. And calling you a helicopter doesn't mean you're going to start growing propellers and hovering above the ground. Doesn't mean any of that. Your DNA isn't going to change. You're not going to become one of those transformer things, those robot things. Yeah, means nothing. Now, doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Doesn't mean it doesn't bother you. Doesn't mean it doesn't offend you. Doesn't mean any of those things. But whatever it is, it's not real. It's just from there. Remember, I think I said a while ago, if you think of a narcissistic person, narcissistic people will often make the most incredible kind of accusations and blame you for things. It's almost like they can mind read. They're going to tell you what your motives are and what your agenda is. And that's because they think you think just like they do. They think you're just like them. They think that you're selfish. They think that you have some ulterior motive. They think you are trying to take something from them. They think you are trying to control them. And that's why you get the nonsense. And whenever you get one of those accusations, again, it's just like being called a helicopter. Even if they have taken something that is true and they have twisted it and turned it into something it was never meant to be in the first place, it's no different from being called a helicopter. And that's why we start asking questions like, what do you mean by helicopter? When have I ever been a helicopter? What makes you think I'm a helicopter? We just keep giving them their own work to do. When that happens, as I say, it can frustrate the hell out of them. Sometimes it could be like holding a mirror up to them. They're having to do their own work. They might see themselves as they really are. In that case, it's going to be very frightening. And that's when narcissistic rage could kick in. Okay, so you want to make sure you're safe. You don't want to be on the wrong end of a rage tantrum or something. But yeah, whenever you get those accusations, yeah, just think of them as being accused of being a helicopter. I really do talk some nonsense, don't I? Michael Skinner says you deserve better treatment. Michael, I would agree, and I think that sometimes when it comes to healing, I think it's not a bad place to start when we realize that maybe we deserve better. I don't think there's anything selfish about that. I don't think there's anything wrong about that. People might say that sounds narcissistic. Well, maybe that is just your own innate normal level. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's healthy. Allison says another way to think about it is if I'm not respecting and sticking to my own boundaries with others, I'm actually disrespecting myself and teaching others it's okay to disrespect me as well. Yeah, a friend of mine once said many years ago. I thought this was very interesting. I've heard it a few times since, but it was him that told me at first. People treat you the way you allow them to. I thought that was interesting. Oh, pardon me. Let me see. Spaceman Spiff says again, the way to win is not to play. Yeah. Your power, and Carol says your power is no reaction. Yeah, you're disengaged from it. You can, I often say, it's an expression I heard one time and I use it a lot. You can observe, you're not absorbing. Carol again says going grey rock teaches you self-control. That's a very good point, Carol. Not engaging and asking questions instead of giving explanations, not expecting anything from them, can take a lot of self-discipline, and it could be something we have to build. Okay, the self-discipline is something we might have to build. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It could take a bit of time. As I said earlier, we get it wrong sometimes, which is perfectly okay. We don't learn unless we make mistakes. We never get anything right the first time, very rarely anyway. We do, fair enough. This just jumped. There was a question I was about to answer, but Maeve Dumpy says, can I do a full glove puppet show? Okay. I'm having the pet Freud at the moment. If I lift my hand up, he's going to climb up on me. Stay where you are. All right, here's a glove puppet show between a narcissist and a non-narcissist. Okay. I don't like how I feel whenever you treat me like that. What was the question again? I said I don't like how I feel when you treat me like that. Yes, you do. No, I don't. You're funny when you're angry. fuck am I doing? Oh, I've just sworn. There's your glove puppet. There's your glove puppet show. Okay. Um, Freud doesn't like the leftovers, Carol says. No, he's right. No, he just wants constant attention. That's all he wants. They're a mad dog like him, honestly. Anybody comes to the house, he gets really barks and he growls, which is a good thing, by the way. But as soon as the doors open, he's straight over to them and he's looking straight at them. Pay attention to me. I'm friendly. He's rolling about on his back, He's trying to lick them and jump up on them and get pets and all the rest of it. So he's a crazy dog. Where did we get to? There was a question I had looked and it had kind of jumped. If I could get to the question again, it was one I was about to answer till he popped up. Darren, this is very helpful. I also enjoy your sense of humor. Thank you, Ellie. It's always I'm glad people get something from these things. Makes it worthwhile for me if people get something from it. Other than that, I think I'm just talking into the ether. NER says, thank you so much for your content. Recently had to go to NC due to decades of abuse and things are hard. Videos have been very grounding and helpful. Thank you for everything you do. You're very welcome, Annie. Again, I'm glad you find something useful. I'm glad you're getting something helpful here. There's a couple of questions that came up. There was one. Bees just asked what if assault is involved. Then we're going into the realms of law and order. I'm not a solicitor. I can't really answer that. But if there is assault involved, I nearly got that out. It's always about making sure you're safe. Get whatever help and support you need. If that's through law and order services or through domestic abuse services, whatever it is, try to get some kind of help and support. Gina says, I suspect they use your reactions to gather information. Don't give them information. There is something in that, Gina. If you think about it, earlier on when you met, they were finding out things that you liked as much as things that you don't like, things you were afraid of, finding out your secrets, things that made you laugh, things that frightened you, finding out all different reactions, a lot of subtle different ways of trying to get information off you to try to learn about you, things that they can maybe utilize at a later date. So there is something in that. Where we go. If you could put up a question, if you put a question mark behind it, it's going to be a lot easier for me to find. Because other than that, I'm scrolling through trying to find. Regina says again, alternate grey rock with yellow rock. Yeah, yellow rock is, and I've learned this recently because there are a lot of different terms these days, and I have to catch up. Yellow rock is just like grey rock, but you're still being pleasant, kind. You're still being polite and things like that. Yeah, I say you don't have to become nasty. You don't have to become mean. Not at all. You're still keeping your integrity and your self-respect. Okay, we go. Dollar's mum says a lot of good info from you. Can't thank you enough. I'm struggling to read tonight, and I have no idea why I'm getting everything wrong. But again, Dollar's mum, I appreciate you being on. I'm glad you're getting something from this. Carol says confidence is the best protection. Actually, that's just as I'm thinking about it, the first thing that struck me there as you said that. Yeah, confidence is the best protection. Because narcissistic people often target your confidence, your self-confidence, your confidence in general, but particularly your self-confidence, your self-esteem, your self-worth, all those things that are often dependent on or what we believe how other people see us and so on. Having a healthy sense of confidence. Now, again, if you've been in a long-term situation with a narcissistic person, what we don't often see is confidence. What we see is more an arrogance, sometimes an overconfidence, an overbelief in themselves. Um, Getting our sense of self back, we know what we know what our accomplishments are, we know what our skills are, we know what we're good at, things like that. We know, but we also know there are things that make us anxious. We also know there are things we don't know, things maybe we can't do without help or support or something. Um, Having a good level of confidence, yeah, that's a good way to help protect yourself, to help with the whether that's going grey rock or whether that's asking the questions back. Yeah, it is going to require a level of confidence. And sometimes people talk about having to build confidence. I think if you've been in a narcissistic environment, it's about rebuilding because the confidence might have already been there. So it's about rebuilding what you had. Uh, Let me see. Inkakum says clarity is the best protection. Clarity, yes, you want to keep a sense of clarity, a sense of reality. You're dealing with a personality construct that rejects reality and will not clarify anything. Again, asking a narcissistic person a question or trying to tie them down to a particular subject, it goes all over the place. Again, goalpost shift and all the rest of it. The topic of discussion sometimes shift, and there are those that can actually, whatever it is you started out saying, they will twist it right round to like 2 minutes later you're arguing against yourself. If you're not wise to it, if you don't give you an example, someone I dated years ago, I remember she'd mentioned something. It was something on the TV she'd said about, that's whatever. And I just says, well, actually, I think this is my point. And she just went off on a rant. Everything, asked me questions, firing questions at me. And everything I said, I was, well, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or maybe it's this, or how about that? And within a few minutes, she uh, gave me the same point I'd made in the first place. I think I was meant to actually disagree with the point I'd made in the first place. But I pointed out to her, that's what I said a few minutes ago. And it just stopped her in her tracks. So, yeah, it's worth paying attention to those things. Um, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. I hope I am. Is it Actunify? Okay. Question: what to do when people taking interest you and you suspect it to be a narcissist trying to dig stuff on you? Well, again, we can become very vigilant, very hyper vigilant sometimes if we've been abused, neglected, things like that by the people in our lives, narcissistic people. Pay attention to patterns of behavior. Um, do they keep on asking questions? Or they keep on looking for things? Are they asking specific questions? Are they just asking general questions? Pay attention, and also pay attention to how they're paying attention to you. Okay. Do they look as if, I mean, we're going to, I'm not trying to go into the realms of mind reading here or becoming an expert in body language or something. But does there seem to be real intent behind the questions they're asking and whatever the behavior is? And also pay attention. Do they talk about personal stuff about other people to discredit them and so on? Things that they know and, because if that's the case, then they could well be. Other than that, it could just be someone who's genuinely interested in you and trying to get to know you. We're not always mind readers. Something to think about is just be careful what information you give, maybe. Okay, you don't want to give anything anything too personal or whatever, in the early stages anyway, maybe. But it really depends on the situation, of course. Um, where do we get to? Every time I go to answer a question, this jumps. um, uh, yeah, reality. Falconer Wing says reality is an aggression. Yeah, reality is hurtful and offensive. Absolutely. Something I've said a few times, because sometimes we get, really distressed in our own anxiety and so on. People can get very angry. There's a lot of different things can come up whenever our feelings become really intense. Feelings can be very honest, but they're not always an accurate reflection of reality. We could be afraid of something where there is no real danger, or we could be angry about something that was innocuous. There was no harm meant. So our feelings, as important as they are, because they drive so much about us, they're not always an accurate reflection of reality. To a narcissistic person, they are. Okay, how I feel about this. It's true because I feel it. You get a lot of emotional reasoning with narcissistic people. It's true because I feel it. It's true because I think it. So, on the other side of feelings aren't always an accurate reflection of reality. When it comes to narcissistic people, reality does not have a vested interest in how you feel about it. It ain't going to change, okay? Regardless of how you feel about it. So, yeah, reality can be a threat to them. So, where do we get to? Indifference is caused. Grace says indifference has caused narcissistic collapse, to my experience. Yeah, it can. It can be one of the things that causes a collapse. Now, for anyone who's not aware, a narcissistic collapse is it's like an implosion. It can look different ways. Sometimes you will see a mad, crazy panic. I've witnessed 3 narcissistic collapses in my life. The first one was a panic where the door was there. All you had to do was open the door to get out. And this person, they were clawing at the door. They were squealing, "Get me out of here." Okay. Another time, someone went into an absolute rage, but no one did anything. They just stared. No one even spoke. They just stopped what they're doing, put their pants down, swung around and watched them. And after about 2 minutes of ranting and throwing things off their desk and so on, and no one was reacting, no one was saying anything, no one was trying to calm them down, that very quickly became a lot of shame and embarrassment, and they started to become very, very low, very depressed, if you know what I mean. Started crying and so on. Everybody hates them. The third time I seen it, it was a real depression. Person went, sort of locked themselves away in the room, wouldn't come out, couldn't face the world. They wouldn't even go to work. Nothing. So I've witnessed 3 different kinds. I could go into more detail about how they manifested, but that's just on the face of what you saw initially. But what causes narcissistic collapse is like an implosion. It's like a shame-based depression, usually. Because, again, reality is being rejected. They're being faced with reality. Different things can cause it. They didn't get what they want. No one's going to give them what they want. No one's interested in them. No one thing. You mentioned the indifference. No one thinks they're special. Certainly no more special than anyone else. They're not entitled. They do not get the status. They have to work for it. They have to earn it. No one's impressed. No one's frightened. They're just not getting fed. Okay, so these are the things that can commonly cause a collapse. Let me see. I'm coming towards the end. Narc collapse can be dangerous to be around. Be careful. Yeah, the one that I mentioned where it was a rage. Was lucky that it was a workplace, it was an environment, lots of people around. Um, just someone that was so used to getting their own way, someone that was so used to throwing a hissy fit and getting everyone to do, uh, what they wanted, and someone who believed they were in some position of power and responsibility, and they weren't. And yeah, just one day we all decided, no, we're just going to sit back and watch to see what happens. And that's exactly what happened. Went into a rage, a lot of threats, a lot of swearing, throwing stuff off their desk, waving, clearing their desk, pushing, screaming, and everything. Just sat and watched. Didn't say a word. No one engaged. No one offered to apologize. No one tried to reassure them. No one did anything. And when they saw that no one was intimidated, they had nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. So again, they started crying, thought they were going to get pity, sympathy, but they didn't get that either. That being said, say the rage can be very dangerous. You do not want to be around when a narcissistic person goes into narcissistic rage, because sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. Right. Let me see. Okay. Him says, I'm Irish and bad temper. Learn to not react, but just smile. I scare him. Irish and a bad temper. Every time I think of Irish and a bad temper, I often think of that John Wayne movie, The Quiet Man. Even though he was American in it, but the other characters. This is the thing, we don't have to become a monster to fight monsters. We just become the very thing that the monsters don't bother with. Sometimes the monsters are going to be afraid of, maybe. And that could be, that fear doesn't mean that we're going to become aggressive or anything like that. It doesn't mean we're going to threaten. It doesn't mean we're going to fly into a rage. They know what we're capable of, in the sense that we don't take the nonsense. We don't take the bollocks. That's the second time I've sworn tonight. What we do is we give them their own work to do. We ask them questions. We don't react to the silliness. We don't react to the drama. Okay. Let me see. Okay, coming to the end because it's just come 9 o'clock. So everybody, I hope you find that helpful. What I said I'll do is I will try to maybe put this together in such a way where I cut out the waffle. If I can't really do that because I'm not the world's best editor, as you can see from my videos, I just might record it again, but I'll record it in 10 minutes and I'll just go through the bullet points and do what I normally do. I'll condense it down. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you find this helpful. I'll be back next Sunday night. Not sure what the topic is, but as always, I will put it out there. People want to ask a question, ask a topic to cover. What I normally do is, if there is something specific that I think is maybe worth covering, I will certainly do it. Otherwise, what I do is I look at the questions and I'll try to get the recurring theme that runs throughout them. And this is what I got from this one. There was a recurring theme. What should I do? What should I say? I've got this person in my life. It's not about what you do. It's what you don't do, or what you do differently. It's about you keeping your integrity. It's about you not engaging in a rigged game. It's about you not driving yourself insane, trying to find the right words that's going to make someone suddenly change and become the version of them that you want, or the version of them that you need. It's about you keeping both feet in reality. Okay, so as always, everybody, take care, look after yourselves. Oh, before I go, I suppose, does anyone want to say hello to Freud, because he has been mooching around the place, I suppose. And as we come to the end now, he's lying on the floor. I can wake him up, what do you say, when he hears this rustle? Oh, lo and behold, look who's here. Hey, buddy, your fan club want to say hello. Up you get. Come on, up you get. Come on. Look at this critter. Oh, look at that. Come on, up you get. Into a handsome boy, into a handsome chap. Look at that. That's your fan club. What do you want? Do you want another one? Would you do it for a Scooby snack? Hmm? Catch you, boy. There you go. There's the wonderful Freud. He's the brains of the outfit. It's just that I could speak, he can't. That's why I deliver this. Okay, everybody, take care, look after yourselves, and I will see you all again next week. Bye now.